Coming up on Locked On Lakers, the Lakers get a huge win in Detroit with an even bigger game coming up in OKC. Plus, what's up with the Lakers offense? Talk about all that and more with special guest Alex Regla coming up next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Lakers your first listen every day, Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, always free, never behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to join nearly 22,000 subscribers, a community of really awesome Laker fans who, if I may be so bold, don't act like a-holes, which, to be honest, is often a big part of sports fan culture and online culture, but not the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel culture. It's a really enjoyable experience. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Brian, unable to be here tonight. He is in transit from a work trip, but in his place, friend of the show, excellent Lakers scribe, Lakers coverage, Alex Regla. You can find his work over at Silver Screen and Roll. Follow him on Twitter at Alex M. Regla. Despite the fact that he just now watched Midnight Run, which I find an egregious crime for any movie fan, much less a guy like Alex who knows his movies. He is welcome back anyway. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, man. I've had a free time on my hands lately. I'm like, it was on Netflix. I'm like, now's the time. And it didn't disappoint. I loved it.
Okay, I could absolutely spend this entire episode on Midnight Run, but David Locke would kill me. The Lakers, I'm so relieved, Alex, that we do not have to have an overarching, holy bleep, what is going on with this team conversation. You know, coming off that 44-point loss in Philly, the worst in LeBron's career, fifth worst in franchise history. You had LeBron saying a lot, quote unquote, needed to be changed. Very cryptic, knowingly, very passive aggressive, as I like to say. If they had laid an egg in Detroit, a team that is now, after this loss, 15 in a row, they've got L's. They have not won a game since October 28th. James Harden was still a Sixer. Like, if they had lost this game or even had been in like a squeaker, you're feeling like crap heading to OKC. You feel like there's really a conversation that needs to desperately be had about this team. There are still things we're going to break down, particularly, Alex, you've written a really good piece for Silver Screen and Roll about the Laker offense that I want to get into. But just, I think that even though they beat a team that's now 2-15, I think this was actually an important win for them.
No, it was, especially, with the context, like you said, they're coming off that disastrous loss to Philadelphia. They're 10-8 on the season, which, given everything that's happened, that's okay. And that's passable and stuff like that. But you lose this game, you head into a back-to-back in Oklahoma tomorrow. Like, that's a tough loss and a tough game. And the potential of going 3-1 on this road trip versus 1-3. That's a big difference. So this was an important win despite who they were playing, and they took care of business, and they did so in a way that LeBron and AD got some rest in the fourth.
Yeah, although I'm starting to become concerned every time we think that's a great setup for the second end of a back-to-back, they always crap the bed. Like, I'm wondering if they need to play like 35 to 40 minutes just to like stay in rhythm heading into the next game or something. But I agree. You want to make sure that those guys don't have to exert themselves too much. It's not necessarily a game that you look for tons and tons of deep takeaways, but what did stand out to you in terms of the way they played against Detroit?
Yeah, it's tough. Like, anytime there's a lopsided win like this is, and especially against a team like Detroit who's struggled as bad as they have, it's tough to take too much away, especially when everything is just overly positive given the result. But I mean, the offense definitely looked more in sync. I thought game plan wise, I thought it looked more fluid. I thought they did a better job finding AD in the post more. They've run out, it's been polarizing, but they've done a lot of 5-out stuff this year. And
that's something I want to talk with you about later in the show.
Yeah, I thought today was a bit more 4-out, 1 in, with AD being the 1 in. And yeah, I mean, Detroit, again, they're not as aggressive in their defensive coverages. They're not, maybe don't have that defensive
Are they
talent.
even defending?
Like we saw like what other teams have done with AD in the post. They've sent 2, they've kind of played 1 pass away. They kind of stunted towards him, stuff like that. So Detroit obviously wasn't as crisp with their rotations, but I thought that was a step in the right direction in terms of getting AD more involved.
Yeah, he and DAngelo Russell both had terrific games tonight. D'Lo had 35 points on 13 of 17 shooting, 5 of 7 from behind the arc, 4 of 5 from the free throw line. If I hadn't said it, I just realized now 133-107 was the final score over Detroit. D'Lo had 9 assists, a steal, 2 blocks. And then you combine that with, I know it's kind of crazy, but you combine that with AD, 28 points on 9 of 15 shooting, 13 trips to the line, made 10 of them, which, by the way, sneak kind of quietly by AD standards.
Yeah.
That's bad. He's been outstanding at the line. 16 rebounds, 3 blocks. Like those two really led the way. But what I thought was interesting tonight, Alex, and you brought up looking for AD in the post, it felt like those two really set a tone together. Like they had a really, really good synergy in this game.
I thought they've had a good synergy all season, honestly. I think D'Lo's been a little bit underrated as a passer this year. I mean, the assist totals have been there and stuff like that, but I thought the turnovers have been way down compared to, I think his rep is kind of a loosey-goosey ball handler. He can kind of be a little ambitious with his passing, but I think it's been under control for the most part this year. I think he's up to like 42% now from 3 after that slow start. So he's just quietly doing what they expected him to do. And I think he's been one of the main guys who's actually found AD a lot in the post. He's found them a lot in these deep seals when AD kind of gets position. And yeah, like you said, I thought they set that tone right away, and they both had huge games tonight.
Yeah, I tweeted out during the game at Cam Brothers that like whatever Laker fans feel about D'Lo, and I hear a lot of it. I'm sure you do as well at Alex M. Regla on Twitter. He has always been a polarizing player throughout his career, and this second stint with the Lakers is no exception. But whatever criticisms you have of D'Lo, and there are certain ones that are legit, doesn't look enough for Anthony Davis has never been one of them. Like I think since the moment he's come back to this team, he's made a point of consistently trying to find AD, and beyond the fact that can be really effective for, the offense and stuff like that, I think for what they are trying to do right now as an organization moving forward with Anthony Davis as, like the most important player on this team, the most impactful player, somebody has to get him the ball for that to work. AD can be more, needs to be more aggressive at times. There are times where you would love to feel like he's screaming at guys in the huddle to get him the ball more, but he still can't deliver himself the ball. So this matters.
Yeah, and like you said, it's easier said than done, right? Finding a guard who can find AD. Like we saw the struggles Dennis Schroeder had when he was his first go around with the Lakers, and I think a lot of people are tracking how many lobs he threw AD that year, and it was really small and really few.
They were better Call of Duty partners than pick and roll partners.
I think it speaks to D'Lo as a passer in terms of he's not shy in terms of trying to thread the needle, because defenses obviously are not going to make it easy for the Lakers to just throw it into AD, right? They're going to front him in the post. And D'Lo is really good at kind of finding AD over the top, right? He's kind of passing him open versus just finding him when he's open. I think that's a big distinction with D'Lo in his passing. So yeah, I think that is one strength of his game, is finding AD, like when that pass isn't as easy as like a normal pass to AD.
Yeah, and I mean, look, D'Lo is not going to be able to make some of the passes that, say, LeBron makes, one of the best passers of all time. But I will say, I do sometimes think that D'Lo, even if he's not as good of a passer to AD as LeBron can be, I do think he looks for AD sometimes more often than LeBron does. So, that can matter more in a certain sense. Coming up after the break, there's a couple other things I wanted to ask you about in this game before we look ahead to OKC. And also, I want to talk about this piece that you wrote examining the math problem with the Lakers offense, which is something that actually Brian and I just talked about during Wednesday's show, but from a little bit different of an angle. So get into that coming up next. Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Game Time. And when I was about 12 or 13, the police were on the Synchronicity Tour. It was the hardest ticket in probably America to get at the time. And I couldn't get seats, but I thought, you know what? Not a big deal. I will just catch the next police tour. Well, they broke up after that tour. And I learned that day, when it comes to a concert you want to see, Carpe Diem. Do not miss out. That's why I love Game Time, the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy shows, and theater near you with killer deals on last-minute tickets and the best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets, start getting hyped for the fun. They offer images of seat views, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation, job loss protection. The Game Time guarantee means you will always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. So snag the tickets without the stress using Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Reminder, the Lakers play the Thunder tonight, 5 p.m. Pacific time, one of the most fun teams in the league to watch, even if it does put the Lakers at a potential risk for a loss because the Thunder are really good. Catch every basket of the Lakers hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Lakers. So Cam Reddish returned from the groin strain tonight in Detroit. Max Christie ended up getting the start, staying in that starting lineup. I didn't hear Darvin clarify whether that was looking to ease Reddish back in or something that he liked while Christie had been starting in his place and maybe looking to maintain. What did you make of it in terms of just what you could see on the court? And do you have a preference in terms of how they go forward with that starting spot between Reddish and Christie?
It's tough. It's funny, so early in the season, so many fans are kind of clamoring for Max to play more, right? And Cam to kind of take a seat. But today it was like, well, Cam should probably go right back in the starting lineup and it should be Max to take a seat. But, they both play similar roles. Cam was really impressive with his point of attack defense. Early on, he was kind of getting the toughest assignment every night when he was a starter. Max is obviously less experienced. But I guess Darvin just likes his activity, likes what he's seen so far. And maybe, like you said, this is just another game to kind of get Cam some reps before he gets back in there. But I don't know. What have you seen with Max so far? Do you like what you've seen with him and the starters? Do you like Cam in that spot better?
Well, I mean, look, heading into this season, Brian and I were both pretty open about our skepticism with Reddish. Look, to Cam Reddish's credit, he has been a really useful member of this team at a time when they needed him. We saw Christie did a terrific job defending both Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell against Cleveland. I actually thought he did a pretty credible job against Maxi, even though Maxi got his. That is a brutal assignment. But I don't think Maxi got against Christie that many easy looks. And when you consider how fast Maxi is and how many screens he's running off, I think that's kind of the best you can realistically ask for. Like a lot of defenders, much less, could Reddish have done better? I don't know, maybe. He's probably a little stronger than Max. He's a little more experienced. I don't know how much better he could have done, but it gets into an interesting question, though. I think Reddish is more disruptive so far than Christie. He's shown an ability to have sort of good chaos. And heading into this game tonight against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who you want on SGA as the primary defender, probably both will see some time on him. The answer, as good as Shai is, the answer could end up neither. And not because either one of them is that bad. It's just because Shai's great.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. And they're I'm glad you mentioned Max's screen navigation, right? Because I actually went back and for that article I wrote and kind of looked at Maxi's 3-point makes. And a lot of them were hard. A lot of them were Max chasing over 2 screens, getting a hand up, and Maxi just making them. And the whole Sixers team made him that night. But
he was like a pinball out there, Christie, just going off all these screens.
Yeah. No, I mean, the effort's definitely there with Max, which is a great sign for a young player, right? Like, he's definitely trying out there on defense, and that's why Darvin probably has a lot of trust in him so far. But yeah, getting back to your point about Shai, like, that's an impossible matchup, individually. And I do like Cam's kind of frame a bit more in that matchup. Max obviously is filled out since he was a rookie, but Cam, I think, has
that off-season muscle, Alex.
Yeah. Cam, I thought did a really good job on Paul George and Kawhi in that Clippers game.
Yeah.
Shai's obviously not that type of wing, but he kind of has that same kind of body structure. And I thought Cam is a little better suited for this matchup, but totally different, pace to his game than the guys they played this season. So I don't know. I wonder if it's like Taurean, or, I wonder if they just kind of throw a bunch of things at him, but we'll see.
You probably want to try a bunch of different looks just to see if you can get SGA out of a rhythm. That's a great comp, by the way, that you bring up with Cam guarding Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in that Clippers game, because that was another game kind of like with Maxi. Those guys got theirs, but it didn't feel like they got easy shots. Like, it felt like they had to work for their points. And, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are at their best all NBA caliber players and all NBA caliber scorers. You expect them to be able to do that. But I thought Reddish made them work in that game. And, most of the time, Paul George or Kawhi Leonard should be able to get the better of most defenders, much less Reddish. Meantime, I want to see what this AD versus Holmgren matchup looks like.
Yeah.
I just looked up the Thunder recently played the Sixers. We're coming off that game where I don't think AD was awful necessarily, but he definitely got outplayed by Embiid. Chet Holgrem in that game had 33 points, 13 of 21 from the field, 5 of 11 from behind the arc, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 blocks. He's a bad man.
Yeah.
That kid is good.
Yeah. And I, that spacing element that you mentioned, it does concern me in this matchup specifically, because a lot of the strategies teams have had against the Lakers this year is either get AD in screen action, which draws them away from the paint. And we've seen already what happens if AD is not anywhere near the rim. It's either going to be an offensive rebound for the other team. It's going to be a switch down low where, like, I can already see SGA kind of targeting D'Lo or Reeves or whoever's out there if AD's kind of having to guard Chet from the 3-point line or whatever. So offensive rebounds is definitely something I'm going to be paying attention to in this game, and kind of what happens in that paint battle when AD's not around the rim to kind of contest everything else.
I mean, the answer to this may very well just be no, and kind of an obvious no, but I'm just curious, do you think there's somebody else that's out there a lot that they could put on Chet instead of AD, where you allow AD to stay at least somewhat paint bound defensively?
I mean, a lot of that is dependent on what the Thunder, like, a lot of that's not the Lakers' choice, right? It's who if they plan to switch everything or whatever, the Thunder can just call that defender whoever they want. So a lot of times we do see teams call AD up into the screen. It's not so much that they're confident that they can beat him off the jump or whatever. It's just solely that they can attack the Lakers backline.
Right.
But this is where you see, like, the absence of a guy like Rui is felt, right? Because we've seen Rui against guarding kind of centers before, even a guy like Vanderbilt or LeBron, even. Like, we've seen the Lakers kind of go to these guys to guard center, so he can kind of roam. But that is something I'm going to be kind of paying attention to in that battle.
Real quick before we get to, after the break, your piece for Silver Screen and Roll about the math problem of the Lakers offense. This Thunder team's really good.
Yeah.
Is there anywhere that you can see a potential weakness that the Lakers might be able to try to exploit?
I mean, we mentioned Chet. I still think they do have a size advantage, like with AD, right? I mean, we say that in a lot of games. We say that in games against Sacramento, for example. Like, we don't often see it maybe kind of play out where AD kind of has this massive game. But I would say I think they do have a size advantage. I worry a bit about a lot of things about the Thunder, but, like, athletically, they're obviously more athletic than the Lakers. They're going they're younger.
You going to go on that limb, Alex?
Yeah, no. So there are a few concerns I have with this game, especially on the second night of a back-to-back. But I think the Lakers aren't like coming in with no chance of winning. I just think they have to kind of definitely clean up a lot of key things that I kind of wrote about.
Okay, perfect transition, because I want to ask you about this piece for Silver Screen and Roll that came out on Wednesday. Thought it was a really interesting look at the Laker offense, so we'll get to that next. Locked On Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel, and you can celebrate, enjoy this NFL season with incredible deals from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets back with any winning $5 moneyline bet. So just take a team, any team you want that you are confident is going to win outright. Forget the spread. Just bet $5. If that team wins, $150 back in bonus bets. You can use those bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, futures, all sorts of stuff. The app is really easy to use. And of course, you can also bet a little NBA action. LeBron, AD, both 75-1 odds to win MVP as of this recording. Anthony Davis, 5.5-1 to win Defensive Player of the Year. Austin Reeves, 3.8-1 for Sixth Man of the Year. He's been rising up those ranks. And Darvin Ham, 48-1 for Coach of the Year. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Enjoy the NFL season. Enjoy sports with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Reminder, the Lakers play the Thunder tonight, 5 p.m. Pacific time, one of the most fun teams in the league to watch, even if it does put the Lakers at a potential risk for a loss, because the Thunder are really good. Catch every basket of the Lakers hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Lakers. So Wednesday, you had a piece that came out on Silver Screen and Roll about the Lakers, as you put it, math problem on offense. And I love that phrasing, because Brian and I talked about that during Wednesday's show. Same phrase about the way we were talking about it, the Lakers not taking enough shots, period. Like whether 2-pointers or 3-pointers, but for them, they're a 2-point centric team. So you really have to take a lot to compete in a 3-point centric league. But your piece really focused on them not taking enough threes while also giving up a lot of them. What are you seeing in terms of this, of the causation for both issues?
So I think I have to check where they're at now. Obviously, they shot better tonight, but they still didn't shoot many threes tonight. I noticed, I think only like 35% of their shots tonight were from three, which is below average. Again, league average. Obviously, they made more today, so it helps. But for whatever reason, this is just an ongoing thing with this team every year.
34 tonight.
Yeah, even with more talented shooters this year, you obviously have D'Lo, Austin's taken a step as a shooter, stuff like that, but they still are at the bottom of the league in terms of frequency. And on the other end, they're also giving up, I think, like the 9th highest 3-point frequency percentage in the league, which is a lot. And I think a lot of it does have to do with kind of defensively. I think Tam does like to kind of send a lot of pressure to the ball handler. And that is something I'm going to watch against the Thunder. With Shai, we talked about maybe one guy can't guard him. So we've seen Darvin Ham do a lot is send 2 defenders at the level of the screen, right? So this was something we saw a lot against Portland, where the Lakers would send 2, and then Matisse Thybulle would have open corner 3 after open corner 3. So this is just an ongoing thing that Ham likes to do, and it's worked for the most part this year, I will say. Like, they are giving up a lot of threes, but they're also not getting burned as much as you would think they are. But yeah, if you're giving up threes and not taking as many, you better be just absolutely dominating in almost every other area to make up for it.
Well, what's interesting though, like this was something when LeBron talked about a lot needing to change, I started like really thinking about, okay, what are some of the things?
Yeah.
And I was starting to just look at the offense, and I noticed, and I had not noticed until this point a couple days ago, that they were dead last in the league for field goal attempts. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously lower than you'd want anyway. But when most of your shots are 2-point attempts, there becomes an onus of you really need to be taking a lot more shots just to make the math work. They're only 10th in the league, at least the last I looked. Things could have changed after this game in Detroit. They were only 10th in the league for 2-point attempts. It's like, you've got to be like number 3 at the lowest for 2-point attempts if you're going to be a 2-point centric team. And, you know, the offensive rebounding issues creates problems for them. They don't get as many second chances. Like, they need to pretty much make every 2-point shot that they attempt. But like, are there things that you're seeing that schematically, do you think, lead to, I don't know, a less juiced offense, like fewer shots taken, things like that? I mean, there's been a lot of focus on them running 5 out and just whether or not this personnel actually fits for that system. Curious thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, no, you mentioned that stat to me, and it is surprising. I didn't notice that, and that makes me want to go check like where their pace is at, like, 'cause that's obviously a big thing.
It's about middle of the pack.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's a huge like factor here. The offensive rebounds would be my first kind of like
turnovers too.
Yeah, turnovers. They do get to the line a lot too, which, if you're getting to the line a lot, you're not going to shoot a lot of field goal attempts. There, stuff like that. But in terms of like not generating second chances, I think that is possibly a factor of playing 5 out. Because if you're playing 5 out, you obviously have your guys spaced out to the perimeter, and the defenders are obviously in the paint, right? So if you shoot a shot, you're going to have to kind of crash in and out rebound 3 guys. And the Lakers, I think, after getting burned so many times off of live rebounds in terms of transition, I've noticed more of an emphasis to just stop crashing and just kind of getting back on defense. And obviously, if you're kind of just letting those rebounds go, those are extra possessions you're losing. And over the course of the game, you're just kind of losing the possession battle, the points battle, and it all kind of snowballs into like this thing where they have to be so good to kind of just make up ground. And that's tough.
I was listening to our friends over at Lakers Film Room, that podcast, and they were talking a little bit about the 5 out, and paraphrasing a little bit, and I don't remember if it was Peter Darius who said this, but they pointed out like that it is kind of unusual for a team that's running 5 out to take as few threes as they do to begin with. Like,
yes.
It's not the only reason that you would run a 5 out, that spread of a floor. Like, it's not the only reason to take threes, but it is a reason. Like,
probably a big
if you're not
reason.
taking enough threes, it defeats a lot of the purpose of spreading out the floor to either create driving lanes or try to make the post more vulnerable. Like, at some point, if you're not taking those shots, teams are going to be like, well, now we can really pack the paint because they're not good at it and they don't take them.
Yeah,
like, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I think defense, like the Lakers can run 5 out as much as they want, but if defenses aren't respecting their shooters, then like you said, they're just going to clog the paint, and then you're playing 5 out and not getting any of the benefits from playing 5 out, right? And you're also the Lakers, this is where they kind of miss a guy like Russell Westbrook, a guy like Dennis. They don't, a guy like Lonnie. Like, they don't have really any downhill threats outside of a guy like LeBron. Even Reeves, we've kind of seen him struggle this year, but Reeves is more of a finesse, gets to the rim. D'Lo is more of a finesse, gets to the rim. Even a guy like Gabe Vincent, like they don't have a put your shoulder down and kind of create space, outrun guys. So you're not kind of creating that extra collapse of a 5 out. So yeah, they're running 5 out. It just feels like they're not getting the value or the benefits of it right now.
Do you think they have the personnel for 5 out? Like, do you feel like you understand the devil's advocate sort of reason that they're doing this?
And I mean, I've seen like the flashes of like, oh, all right, see, that's what they're trying to do. Or where AD kind of gets a downhill look because he's kind of, like a delay action is kind of where he starts to play, right? Coming off of the break. And he kind of can roll into like a DHO or kind of to this next screen. But a lot of times they kind of have him pitch the ball and then take a screen and then 8 seconds run off the clock, 10 seconds. And then they try to ISO LeBron in the wing. And it's like, well, what was the whole point of doing this?
Okay. Whatever they run, they need to run it faster. Like, I don't care. I don't care what they're running.
Yeah, I agree. That's Steve Jones Jr., who's a great Twitter follow for
awesome.
Any NBA fan. This is something he's criticized the Lakers for this year, and I totally agree. There's a lot of lack of kind of what's the word? Kind of like desperation in terms of urgency in terms of getting into their actions, and it shows up. Like, if you kind of rewatch a game, especially in first quarters where they've been really bad, they just kind of are lackadaisical in their sets and they just kind of melt throughout the game. Like, they kind of defrost, and then when it comes to the third or fourth quarter, then they can get going.
It's a really interesting way of putting it.
They're like this old car. It takes them a while to like get warmed up, but then, then it starts to flow.
At the risk of making the totally offensive comparison / analogy to the old car, do you think this can be an effect of LeBron being in his 21st season, age 39, and maybe having to pace himself over halves of games, over whole games? Like, because I've thought about before, like LeBron's, if you look at some of his quarter by quarter splits, he seems to me least involved in the first and third quarters, and then starts becoming more directly involved in the action, whether as a playmaker or a scorer, second and fourth quarters.
I will say it is during those second and fourth quarters when he's running a unit revolved around him. AD is usually taking a break at that time. It's usually LeBron and Reeves lately, now that he's come off the bench. So that I have noticed that too, because that is usually when the Lakers kind of go to their LeBron, let's just run a bunch of screen action for him, where we have Austin kind of be running like an inverted screen where he's the screener for LeBron and they kind of take turns screening for each other. So it's a bit more fluid versus kind of like, well, let's try to find AD in the post. There's a lot of like your turn, my turn with the offense sometimes. And that is weird for a team that's kind of, for a star duo that's been together for as long as LeBron and AD have been like a pair.
Well, I mean, according to you, that's how long it takes for the old jalopy to get going.
It'll take like 4 or 5 more seasons. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, great. It'll be 45. But last question I'd have for you as far as the offense. If you were looking for one immediate change that you think could kind of goose things or get things going in a better direction beyond some of the obvious, like, make more threes, grab an offensive rebound every now and then. Like, if you were looking for some type of adjustment offensively or some guy being used differently, any thoughts come to mind?
Ooh, that's a good question. I know a lot of like people online lately have said like, well, they don't run enough pick and rolls with AD, right? That's kind of been the thing that's talked about the most. I think they do, but it's a bit he's always rolling, right? So if you run a pick and roll and the player you're running the pick and roll with has one for 99% of their possessions just rolls, it gets a bit predictable. Even if they're AD or if they're Giannis or whatever, like at some point the defense can just, they know what to do there. Right. I would like to see AD pop more. And I know he's the joke about Darvin Ham saying he's going to shoot 6 threes a game or whatever. Like that's obviously not going to happen. But I think there's going to have to be a point of this season where he kind of finds his jumper. And if that's him popping out, if that's him making a couple more mid-range shots, I think that's really going to kind of open up more of the floor. Because we talked about the 5 out and kind of what that looks like. A big reason why that works with Denver is because Jokic could stretch the floor. If you're running those dribble handoffs and a defender kind of goes under, then Jokic is just going to let it fly. And without hesitation, AD is not going to do that. So there is kind of some like hindrances to this 5 out system when your focal point of the offense is AD running those actions, because they're just going to sag off them.
He's Alex Regla, and you can find his work over at Silver Screen and Roll. You can follow him on Twitter at Alex M. Regla. Friend of the show. Always appreciate the time, man. Thank you very much. And we will be back tomorrow reacting to this Thunder game, the last game of this road trip, and we will see everybody afterwards.